One Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, a bunch of us all got together and we had really good friends. Richard Drake, which rode the big Harley, and his fiance Frances, and she had a Harley of her own. So, and about 10 other riders, and we were all going to ride maybe up to Chattanooga. We just started riding. And when you have a bunch of motorcycle riders, you know, someone's always breaking down and takes a little while. But anyway, we went into Chattanooga and we ate, and then we were heading back home, and it was getting late and they were predicting rain. So Mickey, at that time, Mickey had a Triumph. He sold the little Harley. He was in the process of getting a motorcycle shop and having the English bikes. He just fell in love with the Triumph. So he had just bought this Triumph, and he had the tag receipt and everything. In Alabama, that's okay. So we go on the ride, and we're coming back, and one of the guys has the problems with his motorcycle. So Mickey puts me on the back with Richard and said, let me turn around and go back and help this guy and see what's going on. Well, at that time, a policeman was there. And when Mickey pulled up to help, the policeman said, you don't have a tag. Mickey said, I know, I just bought the motorcycle. I have a copy of the bill of sale. I have my tag receipt. In Alabama. We have like 30 days before we can have to have a tag. The policeman said, well, you're in Tennessee now, and we require a tag. So I'm sure Mickey said a few choice words. And the guy said, I think all of you need to go. So he carried us back, and I'm not sure what the little town, the town now was, because we were out from Chattanooga, headed home. He did not put us in the cells at the little jailhouse, but we was sitting around the lobby and waiting for the judge to show up so we could pay the judge. Okay. So Frances, the girl, decided to call home and say, we're going to be a little late, everybody's okay, if you want to notify the other parents. So they did, and my dad and mom and my sister, here they come after me, and it had beginning to rain. And I said, oh, I'm fine. I'm going to ride back with Mickey on the motorcycle. And, of course, Daddy, no, you're not, Joyce Faye. You're going to get in the car, and we're taking you home. And another thing, Wayne and Mickey would, I think at that time they were taking D.O. in school, so they got out a half a day. So they told us. But they would ride over to the Rebel Inn Cafe that was across from Butler High School, and June and I would go hang out the windows, but they would come over on the motorcycle and wait for us, and then we would walk over and play the jukebox, and then Mickey would bring me home on the motorcycle. Okay, and I think it was a little while after I had gone to work. I know this was before we were married. Mickey started working when he took D.O. from Huntsville High. He started working at the funeral homes. He started out at Laughlin Funeral Home. They were downtown Huntsville. And then later on, maybe after he graduated from school, there were a couple of funeral homes at 5 Points. At Mutual Funeral Home, I believe. And my daddy would take me over there. This was our dating. And Mickey was at the funeral home. Well, he would want to leave and go across the street to get a cup of coffee at 5 Points. So I would stay at the funeral home, but I would have a chair sitting by the back door. one night there was a body there. It was a big man. Mickey and someone else had gone up to Chicago, I think, to get this body because he had been hit by a train, and he was just terrible, terrible. So, but anyway, it was an open casket. And I was sitting there just scared to death. And of course, Mickey was a jokester, and he told me if the guy raised up, because sometimes the muscles start, what? Contracting, and they do raise up. And he said, but he'll be okay, you'll be okay. So he goes over and has him a nice cup of coffee, and I'm sitting there with the dead man. But then he would maybe sneak off a little while, and he'd take me home in an ambulance, and so that's the way I got home. When I finished high school in '55, and I always wanted to work with a telephone company, so I did get a job with, I think at that time it was Bell South, and they were downtown on Fountain Circle. Mickey a lot of times would come and take me to work on the motorcycle, and then in '57 we got married. That time he had the motorcycle on Humes, the shop, up running, and he had a young man by the name of Ralph Corm, young man, about maybe 14, 15, 16 years old. And Ralph, of course, had a small Harley, and he had big, long legs, but he was a really great mechanic. And Mickey would show him the ropes and everything, so he worked over there on the motorcycles along with Mickey. Ralph, and I would go over and keep the books for Mickey and make sure everything was going okay, and I spent a lot of time over there at the shop. But one night Ralph and a buddy of his, can't remember his name, was coming back from Decatur, and the guy that was driving the car hit a brick embankment there by that creek, and the water went, the car went into the water. Probably stayed there most of the night. The driver was killed. Ralph had broken a leg pretty bad. It had the legs had gone into the front part of the car. The dash. And so Ralph's mother was a nurse, so they carried Ralph to the Decatur hospital, and of course she went over there and stayed with Ralph. I believe that I know that they had to amputate one leg. I'm not sure if not both of them when he was very young because of the wreck. And we would go visit and, take him things and stay with him some. Okay. I wanted to share a little bit about, I think right after Mickey and I were married, we did go to Daytona because he still enjoyed the motorcycle races. Of course, he never raced there, but we would always go. And but we didn't ride the motorcycle down. We would take a car and a trailer, and we'd pull the motorcycle and then maybe ride around after we got there. I remember when our first son, Johnny, was born, all of the races around Claude, maybe South Carolina, any motorcycle race that was near or close by that we could do overnight, we would take Johnny. We would go to attend the motorcycle races. Probably we slept in the car because we didn't have the money for a motel, and we would be in the front seat, and Johnny would stretch out in the back as a baby, and then we'd leave the next morning and drive back home. Mickey still continued riding the motorcycles, And one time he and my Uncle Bill went to Daytona to the motorcycle races, and I think they pulled the motorcycle down that time also. I have to tell you this. Uncle Bill was just a hot-headed young man that broke horses, trained horses. So he always wore nice, clean, white shirts. So they were in a bar in Daytona one evening, and some of the guys, the motorcycle guys, came up to Uncle Bill and smart-mouthed him because he was sitting in there. They thought he was some kind of a sissy because he had on his white dress shirt, and he probably picked up something and knocked him out, but he was a fighter, so they left him alone after that. Mickey, in talking about Johnny, we lived in a small trailer behind the motorcycle shop on Humes at that time, and I guess Johnny was maybe 4 or 5 years old. 4 or 5 months old, and he was crawling, so I put him outside on a blanket, and he crawled over to his dad's motorcycle shop. I think at one time he pulled a motorcycle over on him and maybe cut his head a little bit, but he grew up around the motorcycles. His first haircut, Mickey put him on the front of the motorcycle and drove him up to Andrew Jackson Way to the barber shop and got his hair cut. We have pictures of him on a small little motorcycle, that scooter like that Mickey had found, and so Johnny was on that. We have a picture of him on that.